So we're back once again.
Process again.
Yassis, whatever. I'm sure when Shakespeare wrote Othello that he envisioned one day two English teachers doing a Zoom reenactment while everyone was quarantined because of coronavirus.
He did. He was a visionary. But in order to be a visionary, you have to get good sleep, which is why today's reading is brought to you by pillows. Pillows. Go smother yourself in some good sleep. All
Well,
right.
if you're the My Pillow guy, you're going to create some mask, and we're all going to be safe. We did it.
That's right.
Thank you, that guy. All right. Let's finish up Othello. So yesterday, boys and girls, we read part 1 of Act 5, Scene 2. Miss Young, some more death took place.
A little bit, but we're going to get a lot of death today. But the key thing and the key feature to this scene is who doesn't die. Because unlike a lot of other Shakespearean tragedies, we actually have some key characters that live. So it's a bit antithetical to what Shakespeare tries to do a good chunk of the time. But that's what makes it such a controversial play. Not only do we have a lead character that is African, but we also have key characters that actually live in a tragedy, which we'll talk about that later when we get to it. So, are we ready?
I think we are. So we left off with Othello just smothered Desdemona and killed her. And Amelia came running in and went, "Hey, what's going on?" And Othello's just like, "Oh, there's nothing to see." And then she realizes, "Oh, hey, wait a second. Desdemona's dead." He goes, "Hey, did you kill her?" "No. Maybe." Yeah, I killed her." And so now we left off with Othello drawing his sword, threatening to kill Amelia, and Montano, Gratiano, and Iago have now come running in.
All right. So we start off with Montano. He is our mayor in Cyprus, and he says, What's the matter? How now, General?" And Amelia says,
"Oh, are you come, Iago? You have done well. That man must lay murder on your neck."
Gratiano comes back with, "What's the matter?" And Amelia looks at her husband and says,
Disapprove this villain, if thou beest a man. He says thou told that his wife was false. I know thou didn't not. Thou art such a villain. Speak, for my heart is full.
So Amelia is right now distraught, and she can't comprehend her husband doing something like this. So she's like, "Tell this moron over here, Othello, what you've been talking to me about." And Iago comes in and says, "I told him what I thought, and told him no more than what he found himself was apt and true." And Amelia just looks at him and says,
But did you ever tell him she was false?
"I did."
Well, then you told a lie, an odious damned lie. Upon my soul, a lie, a wicked lie. She was false with Cassio? Did you say with Cassio?
"Yeah, with Cassio, mistress. Go to, charm your tongue." In other words, he's telling his wife, "Shut up."
I will not charm my tongue. I am bound to speak. My mistress here lies murdered in her bed.
Now everybody on stage at once now reads together, "Oh, heavens forfend." And Amelia comes back, continuing to look at her husband.
And your reports have set the murder on.
So Amelia right now is able to connect all the dots, and everything is leading back to Iago. Othello, listening to all this, of course, we know who he believes and trusts, and he's not buying this at the moment, but he looks at all of this and says,
Nay, stare not, masters. It is true indeed.
Gratiano says, "It is a strange truth." And Montano goes, "It's a monstrous act." Amelia looks at everybody and cries out,
"Villainy! Villainy! I think upon it. I think I smell it. Oh, villainy! I thought it so then. I'll kill myself for grief. Oh, villainy! Villainy!"
Iago looks at his wife now and says, "What, are you mad? I charge you, get you home."
Good gentlemen, let me have leave to speak. 'Tis proper I obey him, but not now. Perhance, Iago, I will ne'er go home.
All right, Amelia says, look, I get that a good wife should listen to her husband and leave, but at this point, I'm going to be improper and I'm going to stand my ground. To which Othello is starting to kind of realize now, oh, shoot, I just killed my wife for no reason. And he
Oh,
says,
oh, oh, oh.
and he just falls on his bed, which is where his dead wife is laying right now. Amelia, meanwhile, she is enraged and truly upset with her husband. And she says,
Nay, lay thee down and roar, for thou hast killed the sweetest innocent that ever did lift up eye.
Othello, now standing up from the bed, says,
Oh, she was foul. I scarce did know you, uncle. There lies your niece, whose breath indeed these hands have newly stopped. I know this act shows horrible and grim.
so Othello is, he's like, no, 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 no. I didn't kill her for no reason. She was a terrible person. Yo, your niece over here? And Gratiano looks at him and just says, oh, poor Desdemona, I am glad thy father's dead. Which, what? Brad, whatever, we move on. Thy match was mortal to him, and the pure grief shore his old thread in twain. Did he live now, the sight would make him do a desperate turn, yea, curse his better angel from his side, and fall to reprobands. And Othello says,
'Tis pitiful, but yet Iago knows that she was with Cassio hath the act of shame 1,000 times committed. Cassio confessed it, and she did gratify his amorous works with that recognized in pledge of love, which I first gave her. I saw it in his hand. It was a handkerchief, an antique token my father gave my mother.
and Amelia just,
Oh God! Oh heavenly God!
Amelia is now just, it's dawning on her,
Oh,
oh, my husband took the handkerchief from me and is now planting the evidence. Oh no. And Iago's like, shut up, woman. And he says, zounds, hold your peace. And Amelia says,
twill I peace? No, I will speak as liberal as the north. Let heaven and men and devils, let them all grab shame against me, yet all speak.
Iago's like, I think I can come up with a way to shut you up. And he says, be wise and get you home. He now draws his sword out on his wife. And Amelia says,
I will not.
Gratiano looks at this and fee upon your sword upon a woman. Now he's like, dude, you just drew your sword on a woman, on your wife? What is wrong with you? And Amelia says,
Oh, thou don't more, that handkerchief thou speak of. I found by fortune, and did give my husband for often a soul in earnest, more than indeed belonged to such a trifle. He begged of me to steal it.
Iago looks at his wife now and just says, villainous whore. And Amelia says,
She gave it, Cassio. No, alas, I found it. I did give it to my husband.
filth, thou liest.
By heaven, I do not, gentlemen. Oh, murderous coxcomb! What should such a foul do with such a good wife?
And Othello, now realizing everything, says,
Are there no stones in heaven? But what serves for the thunder? Precious villain!
so Othello now makes a run at Iago, but he's disarmed. So he has a sword, he has a stabbing tool, but it's done. And meanwhile, while that's going on, Iago steps over to his wife, stabs her, and kills her in the scene. So Iago's a murderer now. He hasn't done much in this play. He just murdered his wife in front of everybody. And now Gratiano is looking at this and he says, the woman falls. Sure, he hath killed his wife. And Amelia's last words are,
Oh, lay me by my mistress' side.
so now Amelia joins Desdemona on the deathbed. And after Amelia says this, falls on the bed, Iago runs out of the room because he's now a wanted man. Gratiano then says, he's gone, but his wife's killed. And Montano, the mayor, he goes, "'Tis a notorious villain. Take you this weapon which I have here recovered from the moor. Come guard the door without, let him not pass, but kill him rather. All after that same villain, for 'tis a damn slave." Montano and Gratiano exit. So they want to keep Othello in the room, and now they're going to go try to hunt down Iago. Meanwhile, Iago, dealing with the fact that he's killed someone for no reason, has said,
"I am not valiant neither, but every puny whisper gets my sword. But why should honor outlive honesty? Let it go all."
Amelia, she's not quite dead yet, but now she's about to.
What did thy song, boldly? Hark, canst thou hear me? I will play the swan in dying music.
And so Amelia,
Willow. More she chased, she loved thee cruel more. So my soul to bless as I speak true. So speaking as I think, alas, I die.
all right, Amelia dies. She's done. Dead body number 2. Othello, after watching and listening to this.
Hey, wait a second. Hot Rod died too. Don't forget about me.
Yeah, you were in a previous act, though.
See.
Well, no, previous scene, my bad.
Yeah, that's great.
We have a second body in the room. No one cared about Hot Rod.
I feel left out.
And technically, the only person they really care about at the moment is Desdemona. Amelia, whatever.
Anyway.
She's an ancillary character. No one cared about Amelia.
Anyway, so Othello realizes, I have another weapon in the chamber. It is a sword of Spain, the ice book's temper. Oh, here it is. Uncle, I must come forth.
All right, so Othello, he admits, I have another weapon in the room. I wanted to make you aware of it. You might want to take it, so no one, including myself, goes to get it to do anything stupid. So Gratiano says within, if thou attempt it, it will cost thee dear. Thou hast no weapon and perforce must suffer. And Othello says,
look in upon me, then speak with me, or naked as I am, I will assault thee.
Gratiano comes back into the room for a second, and he looks up and says, what's the matter? And Othello says,
behold, I have a weapon. A better never did itself sustain upon a soldier's thigh. I have seen the day that with this little arm and this good sword, I have made my way through more impediments than 20 times your stop. But, oh, thine boast. Who can control his fate? 'Tis not so now, be not afraid, though you do see me weapon. Here is my journey's end, here is my butt, at very sea mark of my unmost sail. Do you go back dismayed? 'Tis a lost fear, man, but a rush against Othello's breast. And he retires. Where should Othello go?
so we know that Othello has a little bit of an ego because he's referring to himself in the third person. And he now looks at his bed. He sees his wife. He sees the other girl, whatever her name is. Nobody remembers. And he says, where should Othello go? Where do I deserve to go for doing this? And if you've been following along, you know exactly where he deserves to go. So he continues.
Now, how dost thou look now? Oh, ill-starred wretch, pale as thy smock. When shall we meet and come? This look of thine will hurl my soul from heaven, and fiends will snatch at it. Cold, cold, my girl. Even like thy chastity. Oh, cursed, cursed slave. Whip me, you devils, from the possession of this heavenly sight. Blow me about in winds, roast me in sulfur, wash me in steep down gulfs of liquid fire. Oh, Desdemona, dead, Desdemona, dead. Oh.
Luda, Cassio, who is in the chair from the previous scene, from when he got jumped, Montano, and Iago, they've captured him, all come back into the room for the big finale. And Luda looks around and says, where is this rash and most unfortunate man? He's looking for Othello, and Othello says,
That he That's he that was Othello. Here I am.
And Luda says, "Where is that viper? Bring the villain forth." And Iago is now brought forward. He is in restraints at this point. And Othello says,
I looked down towards at his feet, but that a fable. If that thou beest a devil, I cannot kill thee.
so he now, Othello, stabs Iago. But he says something pretty key here. He says, if thou beest a devil, I can't kill you. So he stabs him, and then Luda loses his mind, and he says, wrench his sword from him. And Othello is disarmed. So he loses his sword, and then Iago's got the epic line. He's just gotten stabbed. Othello says, if you're really a devil, I can't kill you. And all Iago does after getting stabbed is look at Othello and say, I bleed, sir, but not killed. And Othello says,
I'm not sorry either. I'd have thee live. For in my sense 'tis happiness to die.
Luda says, oh, thou Othello, thou wert once so good, fallen in the practice of a damned slave, what shall be said to thee?
By anything. An honorable murderer, if you will. For not I did it hate, but all in honor.
Othello is trying to save face at this point. He's just been asked, what do you want people to remember you by? That I was an honorable murderer, that I was a good murderer, that I'm not this horrible monster that you're going to hear me to be. I actually did it for supposedly good reasons. And Luda says, this wretch hath part confessed his villainy. Did you and he consent in Cassio's death?
Aye.
Now Cassio is looking at this going, wait, Iago wanted me to die? Othello wanted me to die? What the heck did I do? And Cassio just looks at him and says, dear general, I never gave you cause.
I do believe it, and I ask your pardon. Will you, I pray, damn that demi-devil, why he hath thus ensnared my soul and body.
And Iago says, demand me nothing. What you know. From this time forth, I will never speak a word. And at this point in the play, we don't hear anything more from Iago. But the key part is he lives. And Luda says, what, not to pray? Gratiano says, torments will ope your lips. Othello says,
well, thou dost best.
Luda says, sir, you shall understand what hath befallen, which is, I think, you know not. Here is a letter found in the pocket of the slain Rodrigo, and here another. And so they produce these papers. Turns out that Hot Rod's been journaling since he's been in Cyprus. But one of them imports the death of Cassio to be undertook by Rodrigo. And Othello says,
villain.
Cassio looks at him and says, most heathenish and most gross. And Luda says, now here's another discontented paper found in his pocket too. And this, it seems, Rodrigo meant to have sent this damned villain, but that be like Iago in the interim came in and satisfied him. And Othello says to all this,
Oh, thou British caitiff. How came you, Cassio, by that handkerchief? That was my wife's.
all right, so Othello realizes his life's over, but he's got one last thing. He's like, how did you end up with my handkerchief? Cassio says, I found it in my chamber. And he himself confessed it, but even now, that there he dropped it for a special purpose, which brought to his desire. So Cassio's like, I found it in my chamber, but come to find out, Iago planted it there. And Othello says, Cassio says again, there is besides in Rodrigo's letter how he upbraids Iago, that he made him brave me upon the watch, wherein it came that I was cast, and even but now he spake, after long seeming dead. Iago heard him. Iago set him on. And Luda now looks at Othello, and he says, you must forsake this room and go with us. Your power and your command is taken off. And Cassio rules in Cyprus. So Luda says Cassio is now in charge. For this slave, he's talking about Othello here, if there be any cunning cruelty that can torment him much and hold him long, it shall be his. You shall close prisoner rest till that the nature of your fault be known to the Venetian state. Come, bring away. And Othello says,
Soft you. A word or two before you go. I have done the state some service, and they know it. No more of that. I pray you in your letters, when you shall these unlucky deeds relate, speak of me as I am, nothing extenuate, nor set down aught in malice. Then must you speak of one that you love not wisely, but too well, one not easily jealous, but being wrought, perplexed in the extreme, of one whose hand, like the base Judean, threw a pearl away, richer than all his tribe, of one whose subdued eyes, albeit unused to the melting mood, drop tears as fast as the Arabian trees. The medicinable gun set you down this, and say besides in the Aleppo once, where a malignant and turbane Turk beat a Venetian and truant state, I took the throat of the circumcised dog and smote him thus.
Othello now stabs himself. And he now falls onto the bed with Desdemona and the other girl. And Luda says, oh, bloody period. Gratiano, he says, all that is spoke is marred. And Othello, in his final words, he looks at his dead wife and says,
I kiss thee, Erie, I killed thee. But no way but this, killing myself to die upon a kiss.
and Othello does something really weird here. Before he dies, he kisses his dead wife's body, and then he dies. And Cassio says, this I did I fear, but thought he had no weapon, for he was great of heart. And Luda has the final word in the say, and he says to Iago, O Spartan dog, more fell than anguish, hunger, or the sea, look on the tragic loading of this bed. This is your work. The object poised in sight, let it be hid. Gratiano, keep the house, and seize upon the fortunes of the Moor, for they succeed on you. Now Luda looks at Cassio, and he says, to you, Lord, Governor, remains the censure of this hellish villain. The time, the place, the torture, enforce it. Myself will straight abroad into the state this heavy act with heavy heart relate. And we are at the end of the play.
We did it.
Tony Awards all around for Mr. Henderson and Mr. Young for reading multiple parts in the play. Now, so
I think I only died off like what, four times there. As like four different characters.
You got 4 deaths. You got 4 deaths. Okay, so the big deal in the play here is that our villain, the guy that I would say if you were to, if there was one person in the play that deserved to die, I think almost everybody in unison, including the audience, would say Iago deserves to die. And yet, Iago actually lives at the end of the play. So that's part of the reason why this play doesn't have resolve, because Shakespeare wants his audience to think about how do you feel about Iago living at the end of the play? A bunch of innocent people died in this play, and the one guy who was kind of the mastermind behind it all, he lives. But the second thing that's a big deal, and the assumption that is made at the end of the play, is that with Cassio in charge, Luda looks at Cassio and says, do what you want with Iago. I don't really care at this point. He's a scumbag. You can torture him, you can kill him, you can do what you want. And so we're kind of left with not exactly a cliffhanger, but we're kind of left with at the end of the play, what do you think Cassio would do? And that's something that we're going to have you think about. And because he's left in charge at the end, not just with Iago, but of all of Cyprus, we're going to have you think about, if you were Cassio, what would you do with Iago? Would you kill him? Would you torture him? Would you just put him in prison? Would you exile him? Would you throw him out in the middle of the water and drown him? We don't know. We're not really told what's left to happen in the play. So what Shakespeare wants to challenge us with is, if Cassio is a good guy, if he goes ahead and tortures or kills Iago, does that make him no better than Iago? Does that make him no better than Othello? if he's just going to act on impulse and emotion and not really put any kind of true character into it. If he's just going to go off of impulse, does he do it? Or if he is a man of high character, who he is, the Opios, if he really is a good guy, with someone who's a good guy do something really terrible to Iago, perhaps leading to the point of death. And so it's something that we got to think about. So don't necessarily put yourself in Cassio's shoes, but think about Cassio and the kind of man that he is, on whether or not he would actually go through with the murder. Mr. Henderson, you got some closing thoughts there.
Basically, boys and girls, if you are ever the title character of a Shakespearean play, you should probably like wrap yourself in bubble wrap, because it never ends well.
Nope, it doesn't. Here's the other big takeaway from the play. Because we're dealing with the 1600s, we're dealing with a Western European culture that looks down upon African culture. What Shakespeare has created is a lead character who's an African man and who has been done wrong. And Shakespeare is challenging his audience to have some compassion and some sympathy for what another person has gone through. Ignore the skin color, ignore the social class that he's in. Just look at how another human being was treated, what this has all led to. Do you not feel bad for this guy? And what I would say most of the audience would look at in the play when it comes to Iago is that Iago is a lot like other Western Europeans, and they're looking out for themselves, trying to get their way, doing whatever makes them happy. It's the you do you philosophy, which is what Iago subscribes to. And so he's not so much looking at other people like you do you, I'm going to do me. No, he's just going to do me, and then everything else is going to be ruined because of it. So we look at the guy, the smart guy, the accomplished guy, the hardworking guy, and we have to look at him and say, oh, you know what? I don't really want to identify as him because he sucks as a character. If anything, I'm more like maybe Othello. Maybe I'm more like him than I want to admit.
We got a cameo appearance by the missus in the background. Say hi to Mrs. Henderson. Apparently I'm supposed to check my phone while we're recording. Anyway.
Okay.
All right. Fun times.
All right. Yep.
And check your SB, and you'll have a quiz and eventually a essay next week.
Absolutely.
All right. Farewell, boys and girls.
Farewell.